Hey, this is Aaron,
And this is Kristin.
and this is the Drive Mode Show.
Welcome back.
All right, it's been a little while.
It has
We had
been a
some
little.
vacations, a couple other things happened. Anyway, today we're going to talk about Kristen got to go to Moab and drive Jeeps.
Yes, it's my first time in Moab. I fell in love.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, fun fact, my parents used to own the mortuary there.
that is an
And I used to go there on the regular. I lived in Salt Lake City and I would drive down all the time. I had a Ford Ranger 4x4. I had a Jeep for a short amount of time before I rolled it down a rock into the river. I had a.
story time.
Anyway, good times in Moab. This time, Kristen, you went to drive the new two-row Grand Cherokee, right?
Yes. The new
And
and revised Grand Cherokee, all new from the ground up.
so, give us some quick stats. Just what's the engine? What's the new stuff to it? What are the biggest takeaways from it?
The biggest takeaways for me, well, let's start with the engine. So there's two choices for the engine right now. One's the V6, the Pentastar V6, 290 horsepower, 257 pound-feet of torque, or you can upgrade to the V8, which is the 5.7 liter, 357 horsepower, 390 pound-feet of torque. And then they're going to be offering the 4xe version of the Grand Cherokee sometime early next year, I believe.
Awesome. So two of those, the Pentastar 6 and the Hemi 8, those are mainstays in the Dodge, Ram, Jeep lineups. Those are well vetted engines. We know everything about them, and we know, they've been used and abused in multiple platforms. So we know what's going to happen with those. Those are predictable engines. The 4xe is interesting though. I've driven, and I think you've driven too, the Wrangler 4xe,
Yeah,
and
I
I
love.
was highly impressed. Are
Yeah,
they going to use the exact same setup in this?
they didn't give us many details on that yet. I expect that to come, fairly soon. What was really interesting is I discovered that they had started development, design work planning for the two-row Grand Cherokee, and they thought, this three-row market's really hot. This was like 5 years ago, so they decided to push forward the Jeep Grand Cherokee L first, but they were really developing both of them at the same time. So now they have new factory, new assembly, new everything from the ground up.
So I'm thinking they're going to use the same setup they use in the Wrangler. Because if the same six-cylinder engine that powers the Wrangler can power the Grand Cherokee, then the same turbocharged 2-liter with the plug-in hybrid setup would definitely work in the Grand Cherokee. Um, One of the disappointments I had is the Grand Cherokee L, the three-row. It gets horrible fuel economy, and there is not going to be a plug-in hybrid that they've announced. And that's one of the biggest downers for that vehicle. But the Grand Cherokee, um, I am really impressed. I like the way it looks, and everything I've seen of it, having never driven it, is awesome. Now, what I want to know is what was it like in Moab off-road with it? Because it's a Jeep.
It was, well, I drive the Summit Reserve, and I drove a Laredo, and I drove the Trailhawk. So I got a pretty good variety of things to drive, and I towed with the V8 version of the Grand Cherokee. So I tried it across the board. As it turned out, as I was leaving the presentation site, I turned onto this road that ended up being dirt and gravel for like an hour. And a couple of us went on the same route, and it turned out to be the wrong route. It wasn't the route we were supposed to be on. We were supposed to be driving along the river. And I was in the Summit Reserve, which has the bigger wheels. And so it was not meant for off-roading, but it felt good. Like it was still good. Now, I can tell the difference with the Trailhawk, which has 18-inch tires, bigger sidewalls, extremely capable off-road. I was driving with head of Jeep Jim Morrison in the car with me. So I was driving very carefully. But we took some pretty gnarly obstacles. He took us up a slice of Hell's Revenge, along the side, and then we took some big boulders, got it up on 3 wheels, probably 2 wheels at one point, and it's very capable.
That's pretty awesome. So did you drive it on the road?
I did.
Okay, and what did it feel like on the road? The big question is not just what it felt like on the road, but the difference between the Trailhawk model, which probably had like Wranglers or something as tires, big, knobby or off-road, or all-terrains, versus like the Summit, which would have had more street-worthy, everyday tires.
I didn't notice a huge difference. I mean, both of them have this multi-link suspension, and it's a very smooth ride. I also love the audio controls. I love what Jeep does with the audio controls, and they put it behind the steering wheel again. They said there was some debate about whether they'd keep that or not, and they did, and I'm really glad. It's so much easier than many of the other systems that are out there.
Yeah, all it takes is you get about 5 minutes of use, and then you get used to the idea that volume's on the right and channel surfing's on the left, right. And you got it down. So I know from my experience with the regular Cherokee that the Trailhawk versus most of the other packages on the road, it's a little bit louder just because the tires make more noise on the roadway. But other than that, the ride quality itself is the same because Jeep has put a lot of effort into their suspension systems. So even the regular Wrangler now is a lot more roadworthy than it was just the last generation. So they put a lot of effort into that. That's why I wondered about the road quality, because the Grand Cherokee, that's a vehicle that's going to be on the road more than off, because it's going to be primarily your frontline family hauler, and right. Then we go on the weekends to go camping and stuff, right?
Right, and it can do a lot. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember what the towing capacity is, but it's decent. It's in line with its class. So you've got towing capacity. It's really nice inside. Even at the base model, I noticed the Laredo had heated seats. It had a heated steering wheel. It had a lot of the niceties that you would hope for in some of the upper trims.
I don't know the tow capacities either. I'll put them somewhere on the screen, but just off the top of my head, I will guess that they're the same as the L, which is 3,500, 6,200, or 70, I believe 600 pounds, depending on the engine and the towing setup you have.
And they've hidden the tow hitch underneath the panel, so you don't have to look at it sticking out, which helps with the aesthetic. It's really nice. I talked at length. I talked with the chief designer and the chief engineer, and a lot about how they figured out back and forth what was going to go and what was going to stay. And there's a lot of negotiation that goes back and forth, just making sure that they can stay on budget, keeping the assembly line intact the way it needs to be, and not giving it too many options that they have to manage.
And that's how manufacturing is with any vehicle, which is why sometimes I'm surprised when there are like 6 or 7 trim levels for one vehicle, because that's a lot to manage and a lot of factory space to be allocating back and forth. So the Grand Cherokee, does it come by default, with working roof rails, or I know it's an option, but I wonder if it comes by default that way.
I don't think it came by default. Not that I can remember. No, but I'm sure you can get it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A vehicle like that, you're going to be using the roof rails whenever you go out to do your thing. Although, I mean, if you can tow, maybe that's not a thing.
Maybe, you can definitely tow. I mean, they had us towing a vintage Jeep from their museum, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
And people were like, but Moab was a place to test it out. And we had the Jeep Jamboree guys there to spot us. And that was helpful because we were pretty close to the edge.
Moab's an awesome place to go. But yeah, I would not go alone.
No. Oh, you
Yeah.
definitely spotters. It made a huge difference for us.
Yes. So final question. How is the interior as far as ergonomics and comfort? And what's your overall impression of the Grand Cherokee?
My overall impression is that it is a very smart update to a classic vehicle, one that's got a ton of staying power. I think that they're going to do really well with the 2-row. I know the 3-row market is very hot, but I think the 2-row is even better.
Awesome. So there you go. That's the Grand Cherokee in Moab. This is Aaron.
And this is Kristin.
This is the Drive Mode Show that you're
See ya.
subscribing to right now.